This is OffPlanet Radio. This is OffPlanet Radio.
Commit, trying to give over my will.
They who were.
When I've dealt with the reptilians and the lower astral. And
right, well, they're stranded there too.
Right, but there were so many souls in human form, astral form, but looked like humans down there.
I'm recording this, so.
You what?
I'm recording this.
Oh, okay. There were so many souls.
Just in case we hit some nuggets.
Yeah. There were so many souls that were enslaved, and they looked like humans, but obviously they didn't have true physical form because they were in the lower astral, or maybe they do. I don't know, but and they had given over their will, and they were just simply enslaved. And the reptilians had taken over their physical bodies here on this planet. And this level, I mean, we're actually just a different level of the astral. So it was, that they had no choice. And aside from
they had a choice, but they already made it.
Yeah, once they made that
to give themselves over.
Right. And so I think we've got a lot of people here that are not human soul. They're from the lower astral. And
well, see, that's where the veil thinning comes in. The whole veil thinning opened all that up. I mean, that's what I experienced in 2019 when I pulled those implants off and started seeing specters, dead people, and all kinds of stuff all over the place.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't tell you about that?
No.
Yeah, I was meditating. I was traveling, but I was becoming aware that I had etheric implants. And so I set out on a quest to disable these implants. And when I disabled them, whatever they were some kind of filter, some sort of, I don't know, resistor. And when they shorted, I opened up probably an envelope to the lower plane, to the lower astral.
Oh
I'd
gosh.
also done mushrooms. So this was all in that same period of time. This was like right before COVID, the summer before COVID, like going into 2020. And there's all this weird shit going on, all this weird energy.
So how long did it last?
It lasted about 3 months, but it faded in and out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'd see him walking alongside the road.
Yeah, people think that we're alone, but we're not alone. I don't think.
Oh, no, it's a stacked dimensional array.
Yeah, and I used to watch the sentient grays instead of there's two kinds. There's the mechanical grays.
Right, the meat puppets.
Yeah, the sentient grays come through a portal in my bedroom and just walk right across to the hall. I could watch them at night. I could just watch them. And they didn't bother me. They just kept going. And sometimes I would just kind of wave, but they never acknowledged me. I'm not sure they could even see me. It's an overlap.
Exactly. It's exactly what it is. It's like an envelope. You can walk between different parts of it. And it kind of gets translucenty. It's like gauzy.
Yeah, it's like you're looking through a really blurry lens.
Yeah. Because there was no mistaking that these were specters that I was seeing. They didn't look 3D. They looked animated. There was detail, but the detail was obscured. And most of the time they didn't have faces.
Yeah, I agree, because when I watched the Greys walk through, I could make out their shape, I could make out their fingers, but I couldn't see details either.
No, it's just that place where you enter into.
Yeah. And that portal, interestingly enough, was opened with black magic. That was we had a Hollywood house, not in Hollywood, the East. Bob Hope and all kinds of people were there. There were all kinds of black magic rituals, and it was all done out in Egyptian crap when we got it.
Wow.
And so I had to do a lot of cleaning, but yeah. And I had to close the portal so that only certain vibrational frequencies could come through, because it was a bus station, man. I mean, at first it was like, holy cow, what are all these things coming back and forth? Yeah, it was really interesting. But yeah, when you give over your will in the lower astral, people do that for fame, for fortune. They offered me everything I could ever want. And I don't trust easily. I was like, I don't think so. And the souls the souls of living physical body people end up down there, and then the reptilian entities inhabit that physical body. So, and I don't know, what do you think about the reports of the shape-shifting? I mean, I haven't had that experience of seeing a person, turn into a reptilian.
Oh, I have, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
we had a little incident here at the house. I want to say 2015 or so. Duncan was here. In fact, it was Duncan and this videographer. And she's pretty well known. I'm not going to mention any names in case I release this. But she started shifting into a serpent on my I have right outside my studio door here, there's a little deck. It's like maybe, 9 or 10 feet, and the steps come up to it. It's like a landing to come into the studio room. And she was exhibiting signs of some kind of MPD. So,
what's an MPD?
Multiple personality disorder.
Ah, okay.
She was kind of flipping out. So we led her around the corner here because it got us, there was, 30, 40 people here sitting out on the deck having dinner. This was one of Duncan's conferences, and I hosted it.
Yeah.
And we took her around the corner, and looking her in the eyes, her eyes went rectilinear, like a serpent's, like sideways, like that. And her neck started to contort, and she started to hiss.
Oh, my word.
Her physical form was still human, but she was taking on attributes of a serpent.
Yeah.
I mean, if you tell people these kind of stories, they think you're either making it up or you're like tripping or something. But this is a real story. It's just that I only have one witness in this world, and that's Duncan, because he and I were the only ones that saw it. I wish Miranda would have been there.
Yeah. The first thing they said when they came to my house and had their thing there, Duncan and Miranda, was, you've got a portal in here, right? I'm like, yep.
You're sitting on all that quartz.
Yeah. And but the question is, what makes, or what allows, makes is the wrong word, what allows certain people to see through that veil? What is it about us that allows us to see through?
Well, I think there's several different reasons. I think trauma is one thing that does it. You become hyper vigilant and dimensionally hyper vigilant.
Yeah, I'm super hyper vigilant.
Super hyper vigilant. I mean, you know what you went through and stuff that I experienced as a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still dealing with my hyper vigilance. Sometimes I have to turn that radar down a little bit, but it's like there's these little glimmers where the matrix breaks down. Like every once in a while, I would, even when I was a kid, I noticed there was a glitch. But it was so momentary that other than processing it, I really didn't give it a lot of thought because I just thought that's the way things were.
Yeah, and we thought everybody saw it, but they didn't.
No, that's the thing they never notice. And see, those are the telltale signs. That's your higher consciousness kicking in. It overrides for a little bit the field effect that we have on the planet. It's like, you know, we're living in a world where there's two planets. There's the original one, and then there's the one that's taken form over top of it, kind of the dark overlay that we live on. That, you know, it's like quartz deposits. Quartz deposits are part of the original Earth. The Earth was a gemstone. It was vibrant. It was green, but it was also blue and pink from these quartz faces.
I live on a quartz deposit. It's great. It's amazing. It energizes you.
Yeah. You know, there's this weird thing going on, and I haven't researched it, so this is just hearsay that apparently the flooded areas in North Carolina are host to a whole bunch of these quartz fields.
Oh, interesting. I'd heard about the lithium.
The lithium, too. Yeah. And the idea that maybe this was a guided storm. You know, here we go with conspiracy theory, but I think a lot of people suspect there was something very wrong with this storm and the way that it just sort of landed there.
Well, yeah, hurricanes don't go inland, and I mean,
they do under special circumstances. I mean, I live inland 300 miles, and 200, rounded off 300 miles from the ocean, although I live very close to the bay. And when Hurricane Agnes hit this area in 1972, not only did it flood the entire Susquehanna River Valley flooded from actually even more than that. It flooded from the north at Elmira, New York. So this entire valley from New York down through Pennsylvania, through two river valleys, was like a gully for this hurricane. And this hurricane got caught in the valleys, and it backed up and it hit us twice. So we had a double hurricane. And we had, the flooding was just, it was phenomenal. It was once in 200-year flood.
Well, you know, I was trying to find out today how many people were missing.
You'll never get a fixed number.
And there was not a single news article about it. And finally, AI came up and said there were thousands still on the missing list.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But it's all just been swept away. It's all just been, pushed aside.
Maybe they've been swept away. I don't know. I mean, they were running FEMA camps down in those regions, too. I still think there's a fair amount of human trafficking involved with all of this.
Oh, yeah. And how many kids are going to end up kidnapped, missing, child trafficked?
Exactly. I mean, we'll just go right into all the dark intentions here because somebody's got to entertain this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and the port strikes have been weird because I have no proof of this, but I've been seeing videos and firsthand reports of people saying part of the problem with the dock workers is they're hearing kids in these trailers. And it's just not working for them.
Yeah. You mean like container cars and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they used to use trains back in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
This was, again, the Susquehanna Valley here. This was a major child trafficking route to D.C. because of we're 90 minutes outside of D.C. probably, as the crow flies, and they fly like the crow, and they have transit systems we don't even know about.
Yes.
But from State College, Penn State, there's a big network that runs down through. I mean, as far as I know, it's still running because it's never been broken.
And I think people are trying to force, there are all these, I'm making air quotes, investigators. And yes, investigate it, but I don't think you're going to get to the truth of this. The point is we just need to figure out what it is and stop it. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to point the finger. I just don't. And
well, this is high-end, going back to adrenochrome. I mean, this is high-end marketing here. It's a product. It just happens to be human.
Yes. And how many of those who are, want that product, being children, are not human souls? How many of those have hijacked human bodies to use to bring the lower astral up here and contaminate the real souls that are here? I mean, if you take all of those that are not people anymore, and you take all of the NPCs, how many real human souls have we got on Earth?
Oh, you're talking on magnitude over decades of who knows how long this has been going on. I mean, my sense of it is that this marketplace for child trafficking, you can go the whole way back to the 1850s and look at those orphan trains. It's like all this Tartaria research that these people were doing. There's some legitimate stuff they're bringing up. I think that they've tried to tie their theory too tightly together with Tartaria itself, but those pictures of those orphan trains, with these hundreds of children in them, and you're like, but where are their parents? And this is like supposedly a reset, and all that survived were the children, and you're going, that's pretty interesting that you've got all these children in these trains and orphanages, which ran... Orphanages were part of my childhood because my grandmother did foster child, but the foster children came from, I think it was the Methodist orphanage, which we used to visit. We used to go visit there in church groups when I was a kid. See, this is my Christian background. And there'd be all these kids in these orphanages. They replaced all that. They got rid of the orphanages because I think most of them, most of them were just not sustainable anymore. Plus, it seemed like the landscape changed. All of a sudden, the term orphan kind of went out of vogue. It's like you didn't hear that much anymore. they became foster care kids, and the foster care system sort of replaced the orphanages. They sort of outsourced it, which led to another network of child trafficking, which is foster care, and human services in different states, and who has jurisdiction and chain of custody over children. Like, kids disappear in those programs too.
Yeah, and they call them all runaways. That's an easy
That's
answer.
the other one is runaways, and some of those are kids whose lives were better living on the street than they were living in the homes that they had with the parents that they had. So,
yeah, but a lot of those runaways just disappear. It's like we lost 320,000 kids from over the border. But they just don't know where they are.
well, you could go to like the bus stations in New York. I remember this, getting off the trains in New York City, and the kids hanging around the bus terminals and stuff, or down by the docks. That was a famous place for them to go because they could do business down there. They could do prostitution. I mean, people down there just disappear. Nobody ever knows they were there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a lot of kids to go missing. I mean,
Tens of thousands probably every year, globally, I'll bet.
where are they going? Into an industrialized adrenochrome factory? Or are they being fed to physical reptilians? Where the hell are all these kids
They're
going?
being harvested. They probably do have underground facilities. I mean, there's a fair amount of legend around this, some of which is deliberate disinformation. But my sense of it is that I actually do think that they traffic them through literal underground networks, like, an underground railroad.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Basically they're kept alive to harvest them. And there's blood transfusions that they'll do with them, like these. Who's that sick fuck that's a
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
real rich guy that I think he's a Trump supporter too, but that's
Uses his son for blood transfusions. Is that the one you're talking about?
yeah. He gets teenage guys, like, I guess, 17, 18-year-old guys, to give him blood transfusions to keep himself young. See, he'll wind up in his later life, if he keeps this up, because he's consenting to be taken over doing this. This isn't natural. This isn't something people should be doing. And,
Right.
He'll wind up at the end of his long life looking like George Soros, or, God forbid, God rest her soul, Queen Elizabeth, or, any of these royals who have, really fucked up bloodlines.
Yeah. And then you get into the, I found out the other day that you can't clone Rh negatives. I thought that was very interesting.
I'm Rh negative. How about you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. AB negative.
Yeah, me too. That's what I am.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's, the Rh factor seems to pop into strange things a lot. I think we're easier to access. I think we have more psychic abilities, and I think we're easier somehow for the lower astral to access, or they target us because they can fit into our bodies better. I'm speculating, but yeah.
Sometimes speculation's all we have.
Right. We can't trust our history, that's for damn sure.
No, that's the fallacy with a lot of this deep history stuff, is you're just researching the nuggets that they left there for you to dig up. I mean, I don't want to put anybody down, because, like, the Tartaria people are so interesting, and yet at the same time, with one or two exceptions, they're so married to their own theories, rather than just letting the wealth of evidence kind of speak up for itself. I mean, there's different eras, there's different epochs that are being blended into all of this, and they're missing the nuance in it. Because, like, those big buildings that look like generators, or like, you know, the fucking Taj Mahal or the Cathedral in Notre Dame, we can't build that shit anymore. We probably never could.
Yeah, and where did those come from? I mean, none of it makes a whole lot of sense. It's like, was it created for us and then we were put here? Was it created by race? Was it what? Because it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's like people ask me,
but it's like dimensional oddities. There's like, you go into a city and you look at buildings, and these buildings were probably built around the turn of the 20th century, but then there's a cathedral. I live in the state capital. So we have the Capitol building, which in itself is an anomaly because they claim it burned, but it's made out of marble. How in the hell does marble burn?
Yeah.
That it was, fire damage. So then there's a whole backstory, and then they sort of coated it over with this post-fire thing. But the truth of the matter is the thing's probably 1,000 years old if it's a day. I mean, The way I've been in it, and there's at least 3 cellars in that building that has sub-basements in it. I know because I've been in them.
Yeah. I don't think we know. People think, oh, well, this is a fact and this is a fact. No, I don't.
No, we don't know. And time itself gets screwed up. I mean, like I said, dimensional anomalies. We just...
Yeah, people need to feel safe, and so they cling on to these supposed facts. And it's like flat Earth, round Earth. I don't know where the fuck I am. I don't know if I'm in a simulation. I don't.
Is the Earth round or is it flat? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
It's all of that. It's because it's an array. It's not. It's like space. There's this whole space fantasy that we're sold about what it is like out in space, and that it's a fucking vacuum, and it's nothing like that. It doesn't even look like it's not dark for one thing. How can it be dark when there's suns out there?
Yeah, and
it's only dark here because of the effect that we have.
Right, and I go up energetically and I hit a dome. I hit a net over us.
There's a lot of things with that. It's like when I was doing the etheric implants thing, and I was doing a lot of work inside the etheric body. And there's grid arrays. I'm not talking about ley lines now. I'm talking about up in the sky, there's grid arrays that I strongly suspect at least date back to Anunnaki, if not, even earlier than that. Some sort of alien construct.
Yeah, they're definitely up there, and I don't know. I mean, I hit them too. And occasionally I get pissed off and blast a hole energetically through one. And it mends itself. It's like, what the hell? What is this? What is this?
It's like a fabric. Think of it like a fabric, but it's a fabric that's composed not of atomic molecular structures, but some sort of quantum array. It has substance, but the substance itself is light generated. It's weird shit.
It is weird shit, and it's a little bit flexible, and it almost looks like a fishnet kind of grid. It's
exactly that's exactly what I thought it looked like too.
Yeah, it looks like a freaking fishnet, and you can blast your way through it, but it just seems to re-heal itself. And I can get past it a little bit, but not too much. Not too much. I can send energy through it, but I can't get through it.
Well, energy is what does go through it. And it's higher, what do I want to say here? It's a higher vibratory, yeah. But it's not like faster. It's just got more intensity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't tell you how high it is up there because there's no sense of feet when you're doing energy work. It's just way the hell up there.
Well, not only that, but it's up there, but it's also kind of sideways dimensional. It's like, I don't know, like almost like a little pocket universe or my envelope. But it's there, and it's controlling something. What it's controlling is what controls this earth. In my opinion, having viewed it, this is part of the field. This is the human collective consciousness. This is the what I've called. I'm doing a show with Bartley tomorrow night, and last time I was on his show, I think I talked about the accretion field, and the fact that all this dark energy that we have has to go somewhere. It's like all these evil fucks, their energy's high intensity, but it's low frequency.
Yes, it is.
That's the best way I can describe it. It's not precise, but it's as close as you can get and still stay grounded in some sort of physics.
Yeah, and that the net is did it feel like a prison to you? It felt confining.
It's a containment field. I guess you could call that a prison. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's a containment field is what it feels like to me. It's like whatever they're shooting up in the air, they're not going high enough to hit it. So where does that leave you? You're talking hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Yeah, and I don't buy this space travel shit either.
Oh, you mean like the space shuttle? They're sitting in low orbit. As long as you're in orbit, you've got gravity working. Gravity completely changes. The physics of everything changes once you go outside of this realm.
Yeah.
I remember that as a kid.
Well, I mean, we didn't go to the moon. We're not going to Mars. Sorry. It doesn't make any sense. Number one, we're in a field. And number two, we don't have the tech for that bullshit. And
well, they admitted that the first moon landing was a joke because they said years ago, this NASA scientist said, we think we finally have the technology to get through the Van Allen belt. Well, how high is the Van Allen belt? I don't know.
Me either.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, it's like anymore I just take everything that I've been taught and say, well, maybe. Probably not, but maybe. I mean, history is just to confine us and make us feel safe, I think. So how high is it?
It's above 640 or 58,000 kilometers, 400. The Earth's two main belts, this is Wikipedia, extend from an altitude of about 640 to 58,000 kilometers, 400 to 36,000 miles above the surface. And the Van Allen belt I mean, there's a couple of belts to this. So you're going 640 miles and you're in so-called space. And then you've got a problem because there's these two radiation belts. There's an inner belt and there's an outer belt. It's not just one belt. So they're saying we went to the moon. Either the moon's inside of the Earth's highest attainable orbit, or we never went there at all. And I don't believe that because I've had people tell me, no, we went to the moon. We just didn't go when and how they said we did. I mean, you look at those capsules that they used, and it's like, those fucking things don't look like they'd survive a trip to New Jersey.
I know, and I love the fact that, you know, that they were talking to them live, but we can't do that now.
I know. In 1969, they were able to talk to people in space, and I still have days when my cell phone drops a signal with all these 5G antennas around.
Yeah.
It's like, that's pretty impressive, guys. What else did you tell us?
Did you have 2 cups and a string that ran from Earth to the moon? Yeah,
that was the whole space fantasy thing that they've sold us for the last 90 years. God, going back to my dad and Flash Gordon.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of romantic. It's just another fairy tale. It's like all the stories that they sell us. There's a truth there, but there's a lot of confection that goes into the stories. God only knows what they did with all that money. I mean, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars back then when that was actual money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What were they doing? What's NASA involved with besides, well, we kind of know. I mean, they've got their fingers into all kinds of stuff. And they came out of a cult as well. And the whole space thing is kind of very occult. Right? You got
I love
L. Ron
William
Hubbard
Black.
and Parsons, Jack Parsons, doing that Moonchild ritual out at Palomar, which is right on the 33rd parallel. This was in like the early 40s. This was kind of like the inauguration, the kickoff event to commandeer the age of Aquarius. I mean, they even managed to piss Crowley off with that one. He disowned them. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I have trouble believing any of it. And people are so desperate to feel safe that they just take what might be logical to them, grab it and hold on to it so tight that they can't.
Nobody feels safe. Are you kidding me? People are walking around, they're almost crapping their pants most of the time. I mean, I'm not doing it a lot now, but I've been in traffic long enough to know that these are fear reactions that people are doing. It's just complete. This is the dark energy. This is the field again. This is the field effect of this trapped energy that's under these grids. And whether they're going, you know, that's why I theorize those grids are much higher than that Van Allen belt, which looks like it itself is probably another 1,000, I didn't look, 1,000 miles or so up. So where does space actually even begin? We're inside of a giant simulation.
Yeah, we are. And it's, well, you know, but it's interesting that you talk about fear where you are. Fear, it's the opposite. It really is. I mean, I'm in rural Oklahoma. And here, people just absolutely cling to their ideas and believe that those ideas, if those ideas are right, then they're safe. Everything's fine. Everything is absolutely fine. And they can't get out of that little tiny box that somehow they've decided keeps them safe. And part of it's being in the Bible Belt.
Oh, it's a tiny box that was created for them. They consented to it. In one sense, it's a more benevolent form of the same slavery that you have with the elites, the practicing Satanists.
Yes, it is.
They can practice their Christianity, which is completely textually incorrect anyway. I mean, if there's one thing I can do, I can take somebody like fundamentalist Christians apart in about 5 minutes because I know their book. And they interpret things out of existence and into existence magically with that book. It's amazing what you can do if you have a southern accent and you know how to holler into a microphone. It's like Jesus could be almost anything.
Yeah. And I have a dear friend, her heart is just golden. She's a wonderful person, but she interprets the Bible in such strange ways. And I asked her today, I said, you don't eat pork, you don't do all this stuff that it says in the Bible not to do. Why do you cut your hair? Doesn't it say that a woman's hair is, what is it, Randy?
I'm sure crown.
And she said, oh, people take that the wrong way. That's not what it means. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, here we go again.
Yeah, interpretation.
Yeah.
My pastor said, this interpretation said, I mean, I got a shelf sitting here with probably a dozen different Bibles. Funny, they're all the Bible, but they're all very different.
Yes. Yes.
And I can take one of those Bibles and I can make you think that the sea is yellow.
Yeah.
Probably from, giants pissing in it, but...
Yeah.
They never want to talk about that. It's like when I asked, this was back 30 years ago when I was still in this, I'd go in and out of these religious quests. And I'd go back into Christianity for a while. It was like a cult that I just couldn't shake. And I had this Black Baptist minister. And I liked the guy. We had some interests in common. We were both into computer programming, and he's actually responsible for getting me into what eventually became podcasting, because he got me producing his radio programs.
Oh.
Which led to me eventually getting a radio program on the same station. But the bottom line is that I asked him one time about the Nephilim, and he just laughed and waved his hand at me and goes, we don't talk about that. And it's like, well, why not? I want to talk about it. I want to know what the fuck that was about.
Yeah, exactly.
Supposedly they were wiped out in the flood, and then they show up again later on, so apparently that didn't work. So I guess God failed in his efforts to wipe out the Nephilim. And there's all these different races, the Rephaim, the dead ones. They're all still around.
Yeah.
The whole alien thing is woven into our genetic fabric as humans, and every once in a while, and I have a friend who's a book publisher who told me the story about being on the phone with a mother whose child had the 5 fingers and thumb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not talked about either. That's real, that really messes with the narrative. So we just won't talk about that. We won't discuss it. We won't cover it. what is that
Right.
called when you have a prehendile or something like that? The prehendile digit.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
term for it, and I just can't pull it out of my brain right now.
Well, and I think we've been genetically modified so many times over the years that we're a combination of multiple alien races and evolution and all kinds of things.
Oh yeah, I talked about this in my last podcast. You know,
Yeah.
there's no doubt in my mind that they did that, and that's part of the monstrosity that became humanity. That's where a lot of these soulless beings came from. It's like cloning. You can clone someone, but you can't clone a soul.
Right. Right. But there is the
Which
tech
kind of
that-
makes it perfect for their purposes anyway, because that way they don't have to worry about, you know, what's going to happen in the afterworld, because it's like the trip really is over if you happen to be soulless.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you know, it's like after all my nerve damage got healed overnight, I could feel them doing it and it didn't hurt and I knew what they were doing. You know, I describe it to people. It's like, okay, if you have a piece of paper on a table and we can't reach into that two-dimensional, we can't go into that two-dimensional world. Our bodies won't go into that.
Well, no, because we have an added dimension.
But
It's the
perhaps,
same. Huh?
hang on. Perhaps we could use tools to access that dimension. And I think that's what's happening when the 4D entities interact with us. I think it's very hard for them to actually show up. But I think they can manipulate our dimension with tech that we can't even comprehend. Because with me, I can feel the presence, but there's no form. And part of that is my psychic ability to know that they're there. But then the physical healing backs up that they were there and they were doing what they were doing. So it's really weird.
But it's like I said earlier, you know, we keep trying to explain things in a material reality, but the material reality itself is part of the array. I mean, from my standpoint, I'm not arguing with reality. There's a point where you could almost become psychotic with this. But I understand that my reality is not my reality. This is, for want of better words, a simulation. A projection is actually the one that I prefer because I think we're projecting it. And see, it's the ability to project a reality that is part of the soul. See,
Yes.
This is where it gets real interesting with the alien thing, because apparently some of them are so imbued and some of them are not. Like, I have a just repulsion for reptilians. And I understand that's wrong because they're not necessarily all malevolent, just like the Greys aren't necessarily all malevolent. And even what we call abductions are kind of encounters. It's taken me a long time to get to this because there's a lot of trauma behind it. But looking at it more from my non-dualist perspective, where I'm not necessarily constructing the universe out of good and evil, black and white, a contact is a contact. That's why I put that old Whitley Strieber that I did in 2012 interview up on my website. And it's what's so interesting about it is that we could have had that same conversation now. It's still it's still like this touchstone thing of us trying to figure out real and what real is. And to us, real is what's tactile and able to be sensed, and yet that subverts the psychic.
Yes, it does. And it's strange because everything is energy. And I think you're right. I think we do create everything in this world because we actually believe it's there. And I always wondered, if you took a baby and you put them in a simulated situation where holograms were taking care of them, and those holograms were telekinetic and telepathic and all that stuff, would that baby naturally grow up that way? I think so. I think we're programmed not to be able to do everything we can do. And I think there's a real conspiracy, for lack of a better word, going on to make sure that we don't know what we're capable of when we can look past the material reality. When we realize
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that they've suppressed our abilities. And on the other hand, they had to go looking for them. That's like all the projects, Then they had to find a way to kind of quick start the system again because they wanted to harness it. The thing was to suppress it in the population. You don't want a world full of aware people, which is exactly what we're living through right now. You have a world that's slowly becoming self-aware on that level, on the level of the psychic. But see, people don't trust that. Like what we call premonition. If you just trusted that, I still, to my great despair, have ignored my own premonitions at times about certain things. And it's cost me. Because we're taught to rely on logic, we're taught to rely on senses, we're taught to rely on everything that we think and know that we were taught and told, and history says this, and our model predicts that. And
yeah. Well, and I think
all that's bullshit.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I run my entire life by intuition, and it works fabulously for me. And everything I need comes to me, even little things. And so I think people are terrified because of, at least in this country, the Christian church has terrified them to make everything out to be demonic.
Right.
Ooh, that's
right.
the devil. And that's a big part of the programming. And spirituality is great, but
it's huge. Well, it starts there, but it purges into the culture as a whole.
It does.
It's weird because somehow or another the Eastern religions managed to merge all that. They actually had much more of a non-dual system. But the Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all have these devils. You even had it going back to Zoroastrianism, which was the first monotheistic system. That predated Judaism. And sure enough, it starts out non-dual, and then it winds up with this Ahriman figure. And Ahriman is the equivalent to Satan. You always had to have force counter force because that's the way the world works. Whereas in the non-dual system, when I say someone's an evil fuck, I'm looking at, like you talk about Soros, or you talk about Bill Gates or somebody like that. And I mean, these people were just bastards because they believe their own system. They literally are projecting and creating an entire reality stream that has the rest of us ensnared largely because of this grid system. And this energy that we just, it's trapped here. It's trapped with us. It's like the prison guards are behind bars as much as the prisoners are.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a question of who the hell are they working for? Or who are their masters?
Yes. And until we can throw off as a race, as a human race, until we can throw off the fear, we can't evolve. We can't find out what we really are. And I see a lot of people who just, if you tell them, yeah, I run my life on intuition. I've said that and have people say, well, that's a damn stupid way to run your life. Because they can't fathom.
Nobody has the right to say that. I mean, people run their lives.
Yeah.
If you saw how this is actually how the moneyed class, the real high-enders work anyway. I mean, they've got enough money that, they can hire experts and stuff. They also have their little church that they go to that does sacrifice, and they have their own astrologers to boot, the dark astrologers. So they're like maybe not uber prescient with intuition, but they have people around them that serve intuition in a way that's kind of pocketed into their narrative. But our narrative, but it's like, this is a question I've been asking myself because I've been like dealing with my fears. And it's like, what is the base level of fear? Where does that come from? Where do you feel it in your body? What does it feel like? And what's the energy vibration that you feel when you get that fear response? And I'm being led back to really interesting stuff, like even with my body, the vagus nerve is so interesting in terms of neural responses.
Yes, and it reacts even when we're not vibrationally reacting. It's very strange. It's very strange. I had an experience where someone was working on the neighbor's lawn next door and was upset with me for a ridiculous reason. And this man just started screaming at me. Just losing his shit, just screaming at me. And my body said, panic. And my mind said, no, shut up. And I let him finish. I stood there and I said, I'm really sorry that you're so upset and that you're having such a bad time. Who are you really upset with? And then he started calling.
They don't know, do they?
Yeah, his brother had died and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, okay. So you got an answer.
Yeah, I actually got an answer. And it was that I managed to override my body's panic response. And it was and once I did it, then it was very freeing because I thought, okay, I am more than this physical body. I choose my response, even if my physical body is just going to lose.
Right.
And yeah, it was a very, very lightening experience for me. And so now, hopefully, eventually, this was about a year ago, my body will start going, this isn't a crisis. This is someone else having a fear crisis, if that happens again. But yeah, bodies are just biologically so primitive sometimes.
Well, the vagus nerve goes right through the heart. I mean, it's designed to react to all kinds of things.
Yeah, and it reacts to things that maybe we don't need to react to anymore.
No, because most of it's imaginary. Most of our fears are imaginary. You know, why do I lock my doors at night? Actually, for a long time, I didn't lock my doors at night.
Yeah, I forget half the time.
And then some things started to happen, things that go bump in the night. So I lock my house, and it's kind of like there really isn't a crime wave here. That my house has been burglarized once, but statistically that's over a period of 30 years. So once in 30 years we have an event like that, other than like when I had kids. You know how kids are. You can't really lock them out of the house, so you gotta, leave your house open for them. And
right.
We'd have bikes stolen and small shit would disappear, but that's kids. But the fear of that's bigger than the actuality of it, and we're sold that fear. I mean, you could feel. I've been fasting news as much as possible. I only allow myself to look at the news every couple of days, and then I'll like scroll through it, and it's like it's all fear. Even if it's just fear of losing an election, you can smell it. It's like all over the place right now, and see, they draw everybody into their desperation with them. I mean, there's fear all over this election because, as much as I would prefer that Donald Trump probably win this election just because somebody has to, and it's not going to be Kennedy or somebody like that, then, but Trump sells a lot of fear in his messages. And Kamala, I don't even know what she's communicating because she makes no sense to me. She's just not a very bright person.
Yeah, she can't articulate. Well, I think, the fear, I think this only happens in really screwed up people like myself. But I think eventually you reach a point where you're just like, you just non-attach. You just non-attach.
I don't think that's screwed up, though.
If you die, you die. And if somebody robs my house, they rob my house. I mean, I don't lock the door when I go to the store. I don't bother.
See, that's probably the way we should be.
I mean, if somebody wants to come in here and steal shit, maybe they needed it more than I did. I'm not attached to an outcome. I mean, I could come back and the house could have burned down, and
or the entire reality stream could just collapse or start to collapse. Which is what it's doing. We're in the midst of a collapse. It's just a slow collapse. We've been here before. And either this awakening kicks in enough that people can learn to overcome their fear response, which is the trigger for everything. I mean, we're sitting on the edge of. They want to call it World War III. I'd call it World War IV because we've been living through World War III since the 50s. There's been a technological war, but we've got all these war fronts now, from the South China Sea to Ukraine to Russia and then Israel and what's going on in Gaza. And it's just insane. What are we fighting about? What are we fighting for? Real estate, the territorial rights to seawaters. I mean, that's a fear of loss. That's a fear of lack. In other words, at the very top of the power structure politically, they really believe that somebody who has access has more than somebody else, when in fact the water flows and the air flows, and there are minerals under the ground for everyone. But that's not the way this works. There's just this constant fear. There's a fear of hunger. There's a fear of, I don't know, name it.
Yeah.
It's materialism.
Yes, and it's become, I think, the fear is being pushed by the U.S. administration. It's like people getting thrown out of the homes that they've lived in, for years and years and years because they can't pay the property taxes. And all these things are pushing toward fear. J6 is to scare everybody. Everyone is supposed to be afraid of the government. And I guess they can throw me in jail. I guess they can take my house, but they can't change my soul. They can't change who I am.
Mostly they don't want to put you in jail unless you're, mostly they don't want to do that. They're not a useful asset unless you're willing to work for Prison Industries Incorporated. They would rather keep you paying. That's a more expansive economic model for them.
Right.
I mean, what right do they have to collect taxes on the land my house is on anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
But they do. And, gosh, I haven't still found quite the answer for that, although I'm researching it constantly. Just like I'm researching all these other technologies to basically emancipate from Washington, D.C. And it appears as though, we talked about this before, the whole, birth certificate, and then, being able to basically bring forward the straw man versus the natural man. And see, that's all interesting, but it's still part of the staged theater act that we live in. Nobody should ever have to prove that because it should be completely incontrovertible that anybody is owned by anybody else or anything that they have is owned by anybody else. I didn't steal it from them.
Well, and the other thing is all the materialism is just said. It's like all these women in my neighborhood are constantly watching the Home and Garden channel. And finally I spoke up and I said,
well, they sold it to us. I mean, what was the American dream? Home ownership. Yeah, well, maybe it's not. It's more like an American nightmare. I read an article a while back where it said that the wealthiest were renting. They weren't even bothering to own property anymore. And then there's that weird mantra that came out of the World Economic Forum, you own nothing and be happy. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure what they mean by that, but I've kind of come to feel like the things I own me. Like a car. It's like a car, You have to maintain it. You have to put gas in it. You have to change the oil. You have to mechanical work done. You probably have state inspections that have to be done on the damn thing. Licensing and tags and things like that. And it's like a treadmill. It's not like there's a joy of going out and buying this thing and driving it. It's like it becomes another child, another mouth to feed. And that's materialism. That's what they sold us. Everything in this whole society has been a consumer wet dream.
Yeah, and people changing their houses, over the years, every 3 years. That's what's in. I said, don't you realize the paint people just want you to buy paint and the furniture people just want you to buy furniture? I mean...
Well, it's this drive for perfection and competition. It's like, I've got to buy the $5,000 refrigerator freezer combination for my kitchen with the stainless steel with, the smartphone built into it that gauges your ice cubes and whatever. I mean, they sold us, and now they're selling us like this high-tech vision, but there's this like whole thing of how expensive of an upgrade can you do and how radically. It's terraforming. It's the same shit that the aliens did to us. We just keep terraforming. Instead of sitting back in a comfortable home and going, it's old and there's paint chips on the wall. It's like this house I live in. The kids' measurements are still on the bedroom wall in pencil. How you line them up and measure them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's lived in. It's not run down, but it's lived in. It feels like people inhabited it.
Yeah, 1960 propane stove is what I cook my meals on. Apartment-sized stove.
Cool.
It works fine. It doesn't. It's a stove. It's supposed to cook food.
Do you really need a Gen Air range so that you can make the best prime rib in the neighborhood? I mean, that's what people were into. $50,000. I watched a former employer of mine go through endless iterations of kitchen upgrades with his wife. Doctor's wife.
Yeah.
And every 10 years they'd tear their kitchen out and they'd put a new kitchen in, and it would be bigger and it would be more expensive than the last one. It would be like they just tear the whole thing out and do it completely over.
Yeah, I don't
get it. I mean, can you just be happy? You could
right.
I'm reading a lot of fiction right now. And I was reading this book, and she was describing these houses that they live in the ghettos in South Africa. And she said it wasn't a bad place. It was quiet and it was simple. It was simple people in a simple community living simple lives. And I loved that summation. I just was reading this a couple hours ago. And I thought, that sounds nice. Just something simple, just a stucco kind of sturdy enough to survive the elements and keep you, from perishing outside, and yet not one of these towering estates of consumerism.
Yeah, I mean, I love my little cement block house. It has everything I need. I never crave. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I probably wouldn't move. Why would I move? I'm quite content here. But the more, and I think that's the second chakra thing. I think that's you don't have a relationship with yourself, so you have to have a relationship that fights with others to feel important. That is better than everybody else to feel important. And
the wealthier people get, the more they're like that too. It's almost like they're more insecure, but they have more money to cover it.
Well, and part of it is that, I've played in that part of society, and it's because most of the time it's because there are no deep friendships. My mother found that out the hard way. She got divorced late and ended up having to get a job, God forbid, amongst her friends. That was, a bad thing, and no one would talk to her. Everyone just dumped her. They weren't her friends. They were just there to show off what they had so that they could feel powerful.
That was the ideal in the 50s and 60s of, the woman stayed home and took care of the home and didn't work. The husband made enough money, and a single or divorced or widowed woman in that period of time who worked was an anomaly, and they were looked at sideways.
Yes. And I'm all for somebody raising the children. Absolutely, I'm for that. Whether it be the man or the woman, it doesn't make any difference to me. But
Yeah, I agree. In some cases, the kids are better off without, one of the parents.
oh, hopefully not. I know you're right, but I don't want to go there.
We won't go there then. We've stayed mostly woo-woo so far, so
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
free to improvise, do some of that weird shit that Dana says stuff. That's
but
why
yeah. I
I'm
think
taping
well,
this, because I was just like, I reached over, I patched you in on the studio when I called you, and I'm like, if I get the inclination here, I'll just hit record, and it kind of went where it went.
yeah.
We hit
Well,
some
I think
interesting stuff.
we're all hypnotized. Every
Yeah,
single
we
one of
really are all hypnotized. That is that's not even arguable.
and
I'll
we
be the
have these.
first to admit I'm still somewhat hypnotized.
Yes, and we have moments where we can break out of it. We have those flashes of intuition and going beyond into what we can be. But I sound like fucking Kamala Harris. But yeah, we can be more, and then it goes away. You know what I'm talking about? That moment of, oh, I should do that, or oh, this is going to happen, and then it's gone, and we ignore it to our own peril.
Yep.
We come
Some
out
of
of
the,
that hypnosis.
all of the biggest mistakes I've ever made were the result of me ignoring my intuition, of ignoring my sixth sense, of ignoring danger.
Well, and how tied into intuition is
See, that's what that vagus nerve is really there for. It's there to viscerally ping you whenever you're experiencing like anxiety or pain or stress, or you're sensing something. That tiny little thing that drops down into your nervous system.
yeah, it feels like somebody dropped a brick in your stomach. I'm so sensitive. When I was married, occasionally my husband would bounce a check and I would know. I would know. I would walk in, I'd say, you bounced a check, and he would say, how would you? And he used to infuriate him. And he would say, how did you bounce? I said, yeah, it did. I can feel it. I was that sensitive to it. And so, yeah, it clues you in. But I'm talking about the moments where we go past the hypnosis and past the programming. And I think most people have never done that.
Nope. Most people are, the programming keeps them locked in. They don't have the ability to break through the perceptual barrier of that.
Yeah, and they can't believe anyone else can get past that perceptual barrier either. They can't, they're so stuck in the programs, hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, that they can't, I mean, they're jailed. Their soul is jailed because they can't get past that. And I think showing them, I used to do readings for people, and then they would get upset because I would tell them the truth about their inner selves. But later, most of them, even if they got mad at me at the time, would come back and say, you were right. And I would break them out of that hypnosis just for a moment to let them see things a little differently. And it's, how do we teach our children to break out of that hypnosis? How do we teach other people to do that is my question.
By doing it ourselves. The best example is when you've got a real life person that does that. You know that from your own children. I know it from mine. Are they perfect? No, but they at least know that I don't look at reality the same way as the average man on the street does. And I stopped hiding that. There's so much that I basically hid as a result of fear of exposing myself, that the older I've gotten, the less fucks I have to give about what people think about what I have to say, think, or emote.
Yes, my filter's gone too.
But that's the way the planet wakes up too. The more people that are willing to become authentic, even if they've got to work through their fears. I've got an interview I did last week with my therapist that did the EMDR on me. And I talked about the effect that had of just going back to my child self, being 10 years old and being sexually molested, and how to empower that child, because I'm still walking around with that child with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's so much fear. There's so many things we hide. We hide them for different reasons, whether it's shame, whether it's guilt. It's all fear. It's all fear-based. You can draw a straight line through any of them. I don't care what it is, of just being authentic. And then to counter the negative aspects of that, being able to give it light, give it space. That's what it needs.
Yes. And I think once we overcome that fear, everything gets really simple. Everything gets really simple.
That's just it. It could all be simple. And at one time, humanity was in a place where it was simple. Creation itself simple.
It is.
It could be as simple as us projecting the next reality. It could be as simple as manifesting the taxman's dollar or the next meal. There's physical motion involved, but once we start to break down time and resistance, because time's like friction that drags on sequences of events. So consequently, this bill has to be paid on the 15th of every month, and that one goes on the 22nd. And, April 15th, you must file federal income taxes, ha, ha, ha. And, that's how they keep the screws bolted down. That's how they manage to keep us in a place where the only reality we have is the reality that lives inside of this containment field. Whereas if you shortcut time.
And part of it is they just keep everyone so busy worrying about all the little bills that are due on the 15th and every other little bullshit aspect, when the tag is due on the car and when you have to do this and when you have to do that, that there's no time to go inside and find out who we are. No one has time to do that. I mean, I do. I'm retired.
Well, if you have the luxury of time, you have the luxury of timelessness. One of the things that my current situation, which is that I'm not working, you can call it retirement or unemployment or whatever, but the fact of the matter is I'm not filling my days being industrious right now. In fact, I've been filling my days with a lot of nothing because I've been trying to heal. And so as a result of that, the luxury of time fullness, where you don't have to measure time in minutes, hours, and seconds, but more by, I know what time of day it is by the sun. I know what it feels like. There's times when I don't know what I've had this happen, and I'm going, man, this is one step down the road further than I wanted to go. I don't know what day it is.
I hardly ever know what day it is. It doesn't matter. It's just another day.
It's just a word. It's just a definition. What is it? I mean, how do we count time? Who started the clock and who's punching the clock? And see, those are all metaphors for something that's a lot larger. That time fullness is the ability to go from thing to thing with a sense of purpose, but without it being driven by the field itself. Because the field will always drive things right to the wall. It wants us under pressure. It wants us worried.
Yeah, and, my daughter will call and she'll say, what'd you do today, Mom? And I said, well, I don't know. I kind of just piddled around, took the dog for a walk and, did whatever, ate lunch, washed my dishes, stared at the trees.
Yeah.
And it's not wasting
time. Sat outside and took my shoes off and sat on the edge of my deck with my feet in the dirt.
Yeah, but we're taught that's wasting time. It's not wasting time. It's
There's no time to waste, technically.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I went outside today and I have no idea what the date is. I have absolutely no clue.
I only know because my screensaver on my computer monitor has, the date and time sitting on it. So I have that as a reference point.
I walked out and it was cold and I went, wow.
Yeah, there's that changing season.
That notified me, to change the blanket on my bed.
You didn't have an app for that? You didn't look at your phone to see what the temperature was going to be in 5 minutes?
No, I don't care. If I walk outside and it's cold, I'll come back and put a coat on. I mean,
yeah, you're supposed to scroll your phone to look at that stuff. Going outside, that's like caveman shit.
I do have an automatic timer, though, called the dog that demands to be fed at a certain hour each afternoon. How she can tell time, I don't know, but she can. Every day at 3:30, it's time to eat. Very interesting.
Think about the mindset of animals.
Yeah.
They don't have clocks. They don't have worries. Their fear response is based on real-time data rather than... and they hear and see things that we don't. In a sense, they operate at the higher end of their spectrum than we do.
My dog can see all kinds of stuff I can't see.
I mean, there's animal logic, and it's like, what the hell is the animal thinking? Well, the animal's responding to some natural process because that's what they are. They're there to remind us that we're supposed to discard this mechanical system and live in a more natural flow.
Yes.
And I don't have any animals here to do that, but my sense of it is that the dog's not counting the clock when he's licking your face or pestering you to be fed or to go outside or whatever. I mean, they know when they've got to poop and then they need to go, and that's basically it. And other than that, they're happy to just be.
Yeah. And I've reached that point finally where I can just be, and finally I came up with an answer when people say, what do you do? I say, I do whatever I want. Whatever I want to do. That's what I do. And they look at me so strangely. But that's the truth of it.
You're helping to mirror my experience right now, because I've kind of been bitching a lot about the fact that I don't think I have enough to do, which is my fault because I could give myself things to do. I do have things to do. But the most important thing that I had to do was I had to get well again, and that was more of a mental and emotional process than it was physical. I mean, my physical is a response. And that's the other thing. I mean, you know, this fear of death, fear of illness, bodies naturally break down over time, but we have some control over that. We have the ability to generate self-healing. It's just, in the workaday world, you don't have time for that. That's why you've got to go to a doctor and a hospital.
Yes.
The doctor's a time-saving device to keep the machine working. And that's exactly the way medicine operates.
It is. It is. And, I mean, I don't have health insurance. I don't go to the doctor. If there's something wrong with me, I'll just look up my herb book and decide if I want to take an herb or a supplement. And instead of saying, oh, I'm getting arthritis, my ankle hurts. Oh, my ankle hurts. I say, wow, I did something to my ankle and now it's healing up. Shouldn't take, and it always does. It always does.
Always does.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling better, but I've taken a lot of pressure off myself. I don't move to that beat anymore. My tempo's changed a lot. Some people would say, wow, you've really slowed down. And I'm like, yeah, and it's great.
It's wonderful, isn't it? And you know, the other thing I did that I think is probably the biggest thing I ever did in my life, and was the best thing I ever did, I took away the shoulds. I don't have a dishwasher. I have some dishes sitting in the sink right now. And I looked at them earlier.
You'll never get your home in better homes and gardens.
Yeah. And I looked at them, and there are no shoulds in my life. No shoulds. Instead of saying to myself, I should do the dishes, I asked myself, do I want to do these dishes right now? And I said, no. I'll do them tomorrow. No guilt, no stress, just no shoulds. I shouldn't be doing anything but exactly what I'm doing right now. So just make everything a decision. No shoulds. Talk about stress reliever. Holy cow. Because that's what we spend our life doing, is saying, I should do this. I should redecorate my house because everyone else did. I should get a better job so I can make more money. I should do this. I should do that. No. Either decide to do it or decide not to do it.
See, should always has this like scolding finger behind it. It's like wagging at you going, you should do this. This is your mother. You know, maybe not everybody's mother is that way, but
yeah.
You should go outside now and do your chores, or you should do your homework, or you must go to school, and all this bullshit.
Well, even the adult programs, you know, you buy a device. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's a computer or a whatever. And you say, oh, you know, I paid a lot of money for that computer. I should really use it more. No, come on. It's there when you want to use it. There's no should. We should ourselves all day long, every day. And it's stupid. And I don't do shoulds. And like I said, it made the biggest difference in my life ever, of anything I ever did. As far as mental health, just dump the shoulds. So either will or I won't.
Well, I should probably end this recording at this point. We just put in about 90 minutes.
Well, hopefully
so let me should stop this recording.